A new movie, City of Dreams. You may have heard of it. There's a viral video. I believe it was Kevin Posobiec who went to the movies and he was attempting to buy a ticket. And when he pulled up the seating map, all of the seats were blocked. You couldn't choose any of them. Now, this is strange. He went into the theater and it was empty. This sounds very similar to what happened with Sound of Freedom. The interesting thing here is that City of Dreams has to do with human trafficking as well. So we're going to talk about this. The movie is now being dropped from theaters. This is a crazy story, but there's a lot more to it. We're being joined by John Deany, who's also, I guess you're a retail and real estate expert. And so you've got a lot to say about what's going on with this movie, with it being blocked. But also, we were just getting into, you're saying that these cities like Chicago, as if they're becoming ghost towns.
Yep.
There's going to be a debt default. Is like before the show even started, you were like, listen, we've got, okay, we'll start. So who are you? What do you do?
So anyway, my name is John Deany. I'm a bond trader. I own a company called United Capital Markets that was founded in 1999. And what we do is we buy and sell structured finance bonds, bonds backed by residential mortgages, commercial mortgages. There are asset-backed securities backed by credit card loans, auto loans. It's a very big part of the bond market that's as big as the entire corporate bond market. And so I was really good at modeling and sales when I was in my 20s. And I started this company and started providing liquidity to these very complicated securities. And I've been incredibly, incredibly blessed throughout my career. You know, my company took off in 99 and 2000, 01, 02. And by 03, you know, I had made more, I mean, this isn't really about me here, but then Jeffries or Raymond James, and, you know, my company had exploded. You know, Tim, like, we're like brothers, dude. Like,
oh, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, that I find our stories very similar, okay? We're outsiders, okay, in very big markets. You happen to be in media, and I happen to be in finance. Nobody would have thought that a young man on Key Biscayne, Florida, okay, never worked for anybody on Wall Street, okay, could build up a business to compete against Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley and Deutsche Bank and have, you know, 300 million credit line from Bank of New York. You know, we were a very, very big company in my early 30s that had hundreds of millions of product in our inventory. And I had earned all of that capital through trading billions and billions of these products. Yes, I got tagged in the financial crisis. If you Google me right now, someone told me I should pay Google to change around and make you look better. I don't really care about any of that. But I was in the Time magazine for being the top 20 people for causing the financial crisis. Kind of a compliment, actually. You know, the little old John Deany on Key Biscayne somehow had a hand. I mean, we had a bunch of these securities, but not anywhere near what, you know, could have impacted and actually caused the crash. I just was very, very involved in those markets. So anyway, that's what I do. I got killed in the financial crisis. I came back. We built our company back, and I'm still doing it right now. And I've always believed in giving back. Okay, throughout the culture of my company is to connect with my community and try to give back. So we have a community reinvestment leg of my company. You know, participated in helping over 100 different philanthropies over time, and so when this movie was shown to me by a great friend of mine named Sean Wolfington. He was one of the producers of Sound of Freedom. This man, 20 years ago, made an incredible story called Bella, okay? And he had funded it and backed it and helped to market it about a young girl who chose to keep her baby. And it wasn't really, you know, pro-life. It was just a beautiful, beautiful story. And since then, he's been involved in 7 or 8 films. And then he showed me this film. And the writer and the director, Mohit, had contacted him. They'd had the film finished. I screened this story, City of Dreams, okay? And I was so touched by the story of a young boy who was trafficked across the Mexican border and enslaved in a sweatshop in L.A. And this is based on a true story. It's about this boy's courage to stand up against his captors. He had the courage to fight. And he fought for his freedom, and he fought to free these other children. And I wept at the end of the story, like you all will, and like the 100 celebrities that all signed on with us to help to raise awareness on this. And I talked to him till 2 a.m. And the next day at 9 o'clock, I immediately called him. I got to my office and I said, you know what? I'll give you the money. And, now we've brought the film to 775 screens. It was going to get out in 75 screens, like many independent films do. And I said, you know what? It's so important to raise awareness on this topic. And I'll get into some of the issues. I've become very, very smart, kind of an advocate to protect children now throughout this journey over the last 6 months that I've been involved. But so anyway, so I embraced supporting this film, and have now started a film company called Manor House Films, and I feel great about it. I would like to bring, we're saying that we're going to make films that matter, and I think that it's so important right now with all this stuff that's going on to try to back films like this that have important purpose and meaning.
Yeah, I agree, and it's sad that it's not a rare thing about what you're saying with the child who was trafficked across the border. That's happening all across this country right now.
But so they dropped the film recently. I mean, so I mentioned this early in the intro that there's videos from Kevin Posobiec where he goes to the, like you go to buy movie tickets and you pick by the ticket and that shows you all the seats and then you pick your seats. They're all blocked out. And we heard similar things at Sound of Freedom. It seemed like they're trying to block this film, which is weird. But now we're hearing that you're saying it was dropped from like 500 theaters?
Yeah, I mean, just to be fair to everybody in the movie theaters and everything, I saw the same report as well. And so I'm not saying anything like that had happened where they're, trying not to sell the tickets. But there's some kind of funny stuff going on right now. The one thing that I know is that our distributor, Roadside Attractions, these two wonderful men, Howard and Eric, run that company, and they support independent films. They've made 200 films now, and they're our distributor. Unfortunately, a couple days ago, they notified me that the theaters, Regal, AMC, Cinemark, they decided to reduce our theater count from 775 to 225 for this weekend. It's our second weekend.
Wow.
Like, what about supporting films that matter? What about helping raise awareness for these children? Like, we are devastated right now. We have a very loving group of people that we've done media and TV. We've raised all this awareness out there.
Do you think because it's not...
But no, real quick, like what movies are out right now?
Beetlejuice.
I know. I'm looking forward to watching Beetlejuice. I am. But like,
that's all I can think of.
I'm willing to bet that if I pull up a local theater, they're gonna be playing reruns. I don't know how you describe it, but old movies. Let's see. These are all coming soon. Deadpool and Wolverine is out. Twisters. It just seems strange to me that they would pull the film from so many theaters when there's really there's what's the competition? What are they making space for?
Even though the movie's not explicitly political, the things it talks about get political when people talk about those things, depending on who's in office and all that stuff. Do you think that has something to do with it there?
Yeah, I think that Hollywood overall and the media right now has an issue with child trafficking and some of these issues like pedophilia for some reason. I just don't know why that some of these issues that are out there aren't spoken about more broadly. It's just so unusual. There's a reporter named Hannah Dreyer at the New York Times. I can give you the link. There's one link that goes to over 20 articles that she's written. She's done an incredible job reporting on the problem at the border. I do believe that part of the pushback, I think, from media and maybe from Hollywood overall is that the flawed policies at the border that this movie is highlighting, that potentially it's giving
election season.
It's giving a big boost to President Trump, because President Trump was very vocal a number of years ago in talking about how the flawed border policy could impact and hurt children, among other problems with the large migration at the border.
If you listen to the whistleblower who is from the Health and Human Services from about a year ago, and you take her word, she makes it sound like Biden and Harris oversee a human trafficking ring at the border. And how many children have gone missing Hundreds of thousands?
Yeah, it's
at this
hundreds
point?
of thousands. Just to kind of back up, I could kind of explain it in an easy way that a lot of people might be able to understand, just from trying to just be a simple man. What I think has happened, okay, and I could talk about two legs of child exploitation and trafficking, and I'm going to first talk about the leg of many of these children that came across the border, and then I'm going to talk about child labor overall and how we all have a responsibility as consumers to buy products that aren't made, okay, from child labor from our U.S. corporations. And I believe that there needs to be new legislation and laws that focus on making sure that the products that we use every day aren't made by slave labor anywhere in the world, okay? Because this is a very important issue, not just in the United States, but across the world. So let me first go back and talk about how I see what happened with hundreds of thousands of children that are being exploited in the United States right now as a result of flawed border policies. A number of years ago, some of the policies were loosened somewhat, and that some of the unaccompanied migrant children were welcomed into the U.S. Okay, it used to be that you could go to a uncle or an aunt or a parent, and then the rules were changed, and now you could go to a sponsor. So these traffickers in Central and South America had sort of gamed the system and realized that they could just dump kids at the border and they would be welcomed in. They were trafficking the children just like they traffic drugs. And they pitched families, very poor families in places like Guatemala, that these children might have a better life in the U.S. And these parents, I mean, as a parent, I couldn't even think about having an 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old kid and giving them away. But these countries have such poverty, and it's so difficult for them that I think these parents just believed that maybe they were giving a better opportunity for their child. And so many of these traffickers would load up 12 kids in a Suburban and take them to the border and dump them off.
Can I say something really quick before you continue? Is there's even in Guatemala, they play radio ads and they have Facebook ads targeting young underage children saying, come to America. And it's the traffickers doing that to bring them to the border to then...
Yeah, they're making $3,000 to $5,000. I saw the same thing, and it's just unbelievable. Like, there's a whole business saying we can. I mean, or the kids are joining these marches, and they're given to another adult they don't know, and the kids just walk away and march for days and days and make it to the border. Anyway, so the kids get to the border. If you go back and look at all the news reports, there were tent cities across the border with hundreds and hundreds of children. Okay, so the children made it to the border. The real big issue that Hannah had reported on, and honestly, I just cannot believe that the news wasn't reporting on this back then in 21, 22, 23. She really did this expose in 2023, and she's still reporting on it in 24. She found that some of the sponsors on this side of the border, okay, had 20 kids. And that the traffickers, in fact, which are bad guys, recommended the sponsor name of somebody in Minnesota. There's a big hotbed in Minnesota. There's Texas and Florida. So the bad guys were giving the sponsor name to bad guys over here. And then she had found through her investigative reporting that some of these houses had 15 and 20 kids sleeping like sardines in 2 bedrooms, and that 15 passenger vans were picking these kids up and working from like 8 p.m. till 3 in the morning for kids that are 12, 13, 14 years old. These are like babies. And then she reported that a lot of the kids told her that the sponsor families were charging every kid in the house $500 of rent. None of the kids are in school. Like, this is human trafficking. This is awful. I learned about this, okay, when I watched the movie from the director, and I was like, what? Why isn't anybody doing anything about this? I'm like, I'll do something about it. I'm like, I've got a lot of resources. I'm a very, very blessed man, and I should be focusing on helping. And that's why I got involved in this whole thing. Since then, I've got quite a bit smarter, and I've met a lot of people that are trying to make a change, but they're pushing up against a lot of the media. Nobody wants to talk about these issues right now because, unfortunately, it is a bit political. And so...
But so hold on. I mean, is Kamala Harris going to make this problem persist, make it worse, or ignore it, or what?
I mean, honestly, it doesn't matter if you're on the left. it doesn't matter if you're on the right. It doesn't matter if you're black or white or Latino. It doesn't matter who you are. Everybody in America needs to protect and save our children. Everybody in America needs to talk about this issue right now. And that's one of the things that this movie is highlighting. This is why this director, Mohit, made the whole story. His intent was to raise awareness on this topic. And it's just, it honestly, that it's one of the most important things going on in our country right now.
It's funny because the media cared a lot about kids in cages, you know, all those years ago. Do you think they'd put that same emotion into this? But it's political, and they won't. So they ignore it, and they you know, sweep it under the rug. And that's a real shame, because it shouldn't be political at all. But I don't think a lot of the people on the left and the media care about protecting children.
The scary thing is that right now, people are more interested in winning for the party than they are for solving the problems this country is facing, or that these child victims are facing. And that terrifies me. You know, we were just talking about this before the show. I was talking about this with some family and friends. To me, it feels like the collective IQ of the United States has dropped by about 10 points over the past 5 to 10 years. And maybe that's a really crude way of explaining it or describing the phenomenon I'm seeing. But it really seems like, you know, what is it? How we can see a human being, someone, like for me personally, people that I've known for a long time, and if I went to them 7 years ago and said, should we look at these children who are being trafficked? I mean, this is horrifying. Should we do something about it? They'd be like, wow, that's messed up. Today, they're just like, why are you against Kamala Harris? And I'm just like, I don't understand. That's not happening. You're wrong. Like, what happened to the ability to think and reason and question? It is terrifying to me that we're at the point where you're not even getting political on the issue. You're saying, hey, we shouldn't let these kids be trafficked. This is horrible. And they're like, well, you know, we could stop it, but it'd be bad for our team. Right. So instead, we're going to shut your movie down and not do anything about the problem. If that's the direction this world or this country is going, then the dystopian future is outside the realm of anything that these authors thought, Orwell or
The very nature of the conversation is political now. You can't just say human trafficking is bad, because that immediately signals to whatever political side you're on that this is a political thing now. We're talking about the wall, we're talking about Trump, we're talking about the borders are. And that's pathetic.
Yeah, we've got right now the other thing that, like, I've been my life is better, and this project to me is a blessing for my own heart. Okay, and like when you have your kids, you know, my kids, I've got 2 in college and 1 just graduated, you know, and when one of my kids looked at me, my oldest daughter, and she's helping with this right now, Corinne, and she looked at me and she said, Dad, you're doing the right thing, you know, and she's fucking right, because I'm doing the right thing.
And it's crazy how widespread it is.
I'm telling you that there are business leaders out there just like me, okay, that people that are in business and that have the resources, they should join together with me and speak up, okay? This is a big issue, and we have 100 celebrities, business leaders, politicians on both sides of the fence that have joined hands together with us. We've been in a circle, we've prayed together and cried, holding hands. I was in LA, and there are wonderful people that are behind us. Tony Robbins has been a very big advocate. He and his wife actually are very involved in preventing child trafficking, and he's gone undercover, okay, to bust people and put you know, fake mustaches on and stuff like that. And he went undercover. He's been very involved in protecting children, and so he joined together immediately. He doesn't need anything out of this, okay? That Vivek Ramaswamy has been a great spokesman and partner for us, and he's said very clearly, it doesn't matter if you're on the left or the right, we need to protect our children.
Can I ask this real quick? When you talk about this story with people, and I also, it's beyond politics, it should be. I wonder if it's that people hear these stories and they just have to tap out mentally because they can't take how evil it is and how widespread evil is, because it's everywhere.
Yeah, that it could be that. I mean, I would really ask that everybody go and see the movie, okay? Because it's so important to understand that there are these really big issues that are going on out there, and there are some really bad people that are doing very bad things to children.
Yep. constantly. In Virginia, just a few years ago, it was in 2018, they convicted 13 MS-13 gang members for trafficking a minor. I think she was 13. And you can see all the messages that they were sending to their clients, bringing the child to behind apartment buildings, doing stuff in the woods, violence to sell the videos to people in other countries. And that was right here in Virginia and Maryland happening. And that's a fraction of how much that's going on.
I want to give a quick shout out in the chat to Jack Frost, who says, I'm pretty sure this isn't live. Now you're sure. There you go. Have you felt any pushback from like you've got celebrities and you've got government politicians on both sides that are trying to stop this, but have you felt pushback from politicians or other prominent interests? Have there been powerful business interests being like, hey, stop talking about this?
Yeah.
Aside from pulling your movie from theaters.
Yeah. I mean, one of it's funny that you say that right now, that that we've discovered that Meta, we've recently written them a letter, but that we've made now, go to our website, cityofdreamsmovie.com. We've got testimonials that have been made now by over 100 celebrities, influencers. I've met a number of influencers that have like 3, 4, 5 million followers on YouTube that all said, you know what, we want to join your movement and join your cause. That we have over 100 testimonials where people looked at the camera and said, join our movement, join this fight to protect children. And do you know what we just discovered? We discovered that all of these celebrities, including like Mike Tyson and Sylvester Stallone that spoke up, they're only getting 5 to 20% of the normal views that they get on Instagram. 5 to 20%. Everything they post gets tons of views, 500,000 views or whatever. These things are trickling in. There's hardly any views. That we wrote a letter to Meta and we're trying to get a hold of them, and that it could be, okay, and it might not be on purpose. I just can't think that it is, but it might be that the keywords of child trafficking, that they have to prevent the traffickers from using Facebook to network. Apparently, Facebook was one of the biggest tools that lured predators to the children. Mm-hmm. And so it's true that there needs to be quite a bit of reform online to prevent some of these other bad things from happening. And so it could be that Meta inadvertently has now suppressed and shadow banned all these celebrities that are trying to speak up, but it's only a trickle of the views.
That's an optimistic view of that.
I don't know. Maybe they're doing it on purpose. Maybe they're not. But I would make a plea to Meta and to Zuckerberg. I would say, listen, you should join the fight with us, please. Mark, like, I'm a business leader. You're a business leader. Please protect and save children. You can help us right now, and you should be helping to amplify our movie, amplify this story, and try to protect and save these kids. We need to find these children. It's been reported right now that there's like 300,000 of these unaccompanied minor children that came across the border, and the government now admitted they have lost contact. Wow. That means they have disappeared into the United States. And we don't know where they are. We don't know what adult they're with. It's cuckoo. It's, first of all, it's totally cuckoo that a 10-year-old kid could get to the border and they're not with a parent or guardian, and that you could let a kid cross the border. First of all, that's kind of crazy. Like, that shouldn't be happening. And that now they've given them to sponsors with absolutely no vetting. In the foster system, they've learned that the foster families can exploit children. A foster family needs to text back and forth and show a photo. Are kids okay? Weekly, monthly.
HHS was giving children to sponsors that were MS-13.
Wow.
Yes, that this whole system, they've admitted now, and there were a dozen of people at HSS that have resigned over this whole matter. That what you're talking about was all the whistleblowers that walked out, and that Hannah Dreier reported on this, and good for her. For
40 kids
up.
going to one sponsor.
Yeah, that good thing for her speaking up for the children. Okay, that is a liberal newspaper, and she had the guts to report this and to report about these whistleblowers that walked out of there, and they warned them that this system of giving these kids without vetting to these sponsors could harm the children. However, that very senior people that were involved in caring for the kids in these tent encampments were being were given clear directive that it looked very bad on TV that all these kids were there, and they said, you've got to push them out. We want you to push them out faster. And so there's no check. Nobody ever checked on any kid. Nobody checked. They let these unaccompanied minor children into our country, and they never checked to see if they were okay. It's just crazy.
For the people listening who are like, this is hyper partisan, this conversation is so political. This also happened under Trump. You know, many thousands of children went missing, and his administration said, once they go to their sponsor homes, we have no oversight. We don't check up on them. So it's not just now.
That's right.
It's been going on for quite some time, and no one seems to care. And I don't know how they're going to fix it.
Are you familiar with the story where it was Dr. Phil speaking on I think it was on The View, right? Where he said that he went down and interviewed Border Patrol, and they said children will come up with numbers on their arms that they know are sex trafficking rings, and they just send them right to these people.
Yeah. When I was in Yuma at the border, there's lettuce farms along the wall on our side, and the farmers will be like, children just walk up, young, 8 years old, with numbers on them, for like what Tim's saying. You just call this number.
Yeah, and then Hannah even reported, you know, she's talked to a lot of these children that some of the children are responsible for paying back the $3,000 to $5,000, and that it's like a loan on their head. So now you've got like little kid indentured servants. So like it's so important. This issue is so important, and so I recognized that it was a big issue, and I said, you know what, I'm going to fund the movie. Now I've realized that I should speak up. So it takes courage. It takes courage for me to say, hey, I'm going to speak up, and I'm going to give a voice to these children that have no voice. Okay? Because if I'm not using my voice, and if you're not using your voice to speak up right now, who's going to speak up for these kids? Okay? The media is not doing it. Yep. Our mainstream media, I mean, go and look on the internet. Who else besides Hannah, who had the guts to report on this issue? Who else has the guts to report on this? The TV isn't, okay?
They'll only do it when it's advantageous to their political side. And even then, it's not full. Like when I say kids in cages, those are Obama's pictures that they're using against Trump. They only do it, they pick and choose how they want to do it when they do it. And right now, because of all the stuff at the border, they're not going to touch it because it makes their side look bad. But it should make everyone look bad because it's been a total failure for many years.
It's scary stuff, man. I'm mostly scared of, you know, I feel like we know the trafficking happens, we know bad stuff happens, but we assume that most people, 99%, 99.9, the people who aren't traffickers or who are exploiting these kids want it to stop. And like with Sound of Freedom, the way the media attacked that film and called it a MAGA conspiracy theory, all this great, are these journalists, are they getting paid off by the cartels or what is this? Like, I don't understand what their connection is to it, where they absolutely have to defend this machine. If you're a journalist in New York and you hate Donald Trump and you're writing, you know, Trump is bad, I don't like the man, and someone comes to you and says, would you like to write a piece about how there's sex trafficking on the border? For what reason are they like, I better make that story go away? They hate Trump that much.
Yeah.
That's terrifying to me.
Yeah.
What that means for this country.
I saw Sound of Freedom in the Capitol when McCarthy was still speaker. He invited a bunch of people there, and he said he invited everyone to come watch it. Democrats, not one Democrat was in that room. No one. And because at that point it had been in the headlines as this kind of right-leaning film. There's no politics in that film, but that's what people believe. So they couldn't show up because the second you're in that room, now you're guilty by association, even though it's for a really good cause to help protect children.
We were invited, and I'm a little bit discouraged because we've now been rescheduled. Okay. But we were invited to screen the movie for the Senate and Congress. And it got rescheduled after the Trump assassination hearings took over the big chamber there. But we're really hoping to be able to screen this movie. I'm going to write a speech, okay? I'm going to try to use my leadership in my own voice. And I would only hope that the left and the right can come together, okay, and to address this issue. And I hope that this movie can inspire people. I hope that politicians on the left and the right will please watch the movie, okay, because it touched me. It made me very emotional after I saw the movie. And the movie is very good. It's an edge of your seat thriller. So it's a thriller. It is a little bit difficult to watch because nobody likes to see children that are beaten. And but the
Maybe some of those journalists, I guess.
yeah, the director Mohit is incredibly creative. He got an A cinema score, which is very hard to get. Only a handful of other movies received that. We have 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. Not surprising, a lot of the critics slammed the movie. All the top critics slammed.
What do they say?
Said
Like, what
that
is
it was
their-
awful? They said it's just a terrible movie that.
Do they bring politics into it into their critiques, or
No, they just said that all of the most popular critics hate the movie.
It is the weirdest thing, I of course saw Sound of Freedom, and I would compare it to like an extended episode of Law and Order SVU or something. Very popular show, been on for decades. It's about a cop who is tracking down trying to save these children and going after the traffickers, and then he does. And I was like, oh, that was fun. Like, that's a good movie, and it's got a strong message, and it highlights this issue, and like Law and Order almost. I mean, there's no court in it in the same way, but I don't understand why the critics are just like, nope, it's a bad movie, don't watch it. It's strange, and I'm going back to what I was saying before, where it feels like something happened where the collective IQ just like dropped. I don't know what it is. By all means, y'all can figure it out. But how are we at this point where I don't know.
I think lockdowns accelerated mental decline.
But it's even before this.
Yeah.
Like around the time of 2015, 16, sure, the Large Hadron Collider fried the brains of half the population. I have no idea.
Well, that's obvious. Yeah.
But now we can see this consistently with movies where the critics are like, it's a bad movie, don't watch. And the fans are like, we like it. Now, this is not, the reason why I find this interesting is the audience scores are real. I mean, these are people who watched the movie and said, yeah, it was a good movie. What is this detachment that these media personalities who are not well-off, wealthy people for the most part, some of them are, but how is they all collectively say the movie is bad?
I think a lot of them are protecting themselves because a lot of them do these bad things. There was one of the biggest BBC reporters was just arrested for child, imagery, horrible stuff. We had that CNN local reporter, and I forget what state he was in, just the same thing. We were talking about Beetlejuice, the father from Beetlejuice, the original one. He took pictures of underage children.
Wait, what?
Yeah, Jeffrey Jones, maybe.
The actor who played the dad?
Yeah, who moved into the house. Look, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Jeffrey Jones is his name. I could be wrong. I think that was in 2002 or 3. I don't think he's in the new Beetlejuice, but I think his character is. But like, this stuff isn't just hiding in the shadows. It's literally everywhere. And it's organized, like the stuff you're talking about with the border, MS-13, our government. Am I right?
didn't know that about this guy.
Right?
That was 20 years ago.
Is it Jeffrey Jones?
Yeah. He was arrested and he's an offender. Holy crap, this guy's in a ton of movies.
Yeah. Yeah, Ferris Bueller.
What? He's in Ferris Bueller,
Yeah.
Amadeus, Beetlejuice. Wow, The Crucible, Stuart Little, Dr. Dolittle 2.
Yep. The father from Seventh Heaven.
What?
These people are everywhere. Evil is everywhere. I think that's why a lot of people don't want to do it. Either they want to look away because it's too much to take, or they do this stuff. And they're in every institution, at every level.
The reviews from the audience and a lot of the feedback, I'm one of the filmmakers now and a producer and an executive producer on this film. And so I've myself talked to hundreds of people now that have seen the film. Everyone loves the film. As I said, it's a bit hard to watch. This director, by the way, Mohit, I've said he is so creative. I mean, like, he could win an Oscar for this film. It's that good.
That's awesome.
I'm sorry. He was in 33 episodes of Deadwood. this guy who was arrested on 2001, these charges, he provided various voices over 4 episodes. Invader Zim, was on the Zeta Project, Justice League.
Had a whole career.
He was in Stuart Little, Deadwood for 2 years and 33 episodes. You'd think after something like that, they'd be like, maybe we shouldn't work with this guy and have him around anymore.
No, they like this. Hollywood is messed up, dude. Obviously, it's not everybody, but it's a lot of people.
Yeah,
and it seems to be a lot of people in Hollywood who do it. You know, they're friends with them. They promote it. They put it imagery like it in this. You know, going back and watching certain movies, you see there's a lot of dark stuff for children.
Is it that reality always was this way? And the internet came and allowed those of critical thinking, reason, and good morals to
no matter how modern we look, we are always going to be barbaric. They always do this stuff.
But so what I'm saying is, in 1990, there are these people, you know, pedophiles in deep seats of power in media, and they're controlling narratives so that they can keep doing these things. I mean, obviously Epstein was doing his thing in the 90s. But is that just the reality that the internet comes out and then reasoned moral people are like, hey, wait a minute, what is this?
Yeah, when I wrote my story about Alex Rosen, who was on the show, and we talked about he goes around, captures child predators. And something I was thinking about while doing that story is the internet certainly accelerated the ability for really evil people to attack children. But it also allowed people to use the internet to get those people. So it's just constantly like catching up with it. It's horrible, but at least there is a silver lining that you can use it. Like you're using your voice, you're making a movie, and you're putting it out here to help the people understand and bring awareness about. But the internet has certainly allowed, like you're talking about Facebook, and I said it was an optimistic view you had of it.
Yeah.
Facebook helps promote and disseminate all of that stuff. As of this year, there was that other whistleblower who had a congressional hearing talking about how they went out of their way to suppress you name any Trump talk, January 6th talk, vaccine talk, whatever. But when it came to the child exploitation stuff, there was they didn't do anything to stop it. That's why I'm saying like, wow, I hope you're right with what you're saying, being caught up in that algorithm to get rid of the bad stuff. But as far as like 9 months ago, they were still promoting that stuff and doing nothing about it. I think stuff like Meta is a tool for these organized criminals to sell these kids.
It is crazy to me that this dude from Beetlejuice was charged with and convicted, I believe. I want to make sure I get it. He's a registered sex offender. And they say that he was he faced further charges in 2004. He was arrested for failing to update his sex offender status. And they just keep booking him.
Got jobs.
I mean, certainly you can find other actors. There's many people trying to get in the industry.
Yep.
This is terrifying stuff, man. As you look at the Epstein stuff too, and you just have to wonder. And then you look at, people like Alex Jones and others who have been calling out powerful pedophile individuals for a long time. And it makes you wonder about the rest of what Alex Jones says.
Oh, there's a lot that's true.
Yeah, I mean, because
it's weird that Alex becomes the leper, right? When it should be this guy who's the leper, but he's not. He's embraced by the elites. Totally bananas.
So he pleaded no contest to one charge and not guilty. And let's see, it was a misdemeanor charge dropped following a no contest plea. His attorney emphasized there was no allegation of improper physical contact. His punishment was 5 years probation, counseling, and the requirement to register as a sex offender. So I suppose for legal purposes, a no contest pleading is not an admission of guilt. It's, I will not fight this,
right,
without admitting it. I think it's a California thing.
That must be nice.
It's crazy that we live in this world. But, outside of all this stuff too, I don't know if you want to move on to talk about the real estate market and what we're seeing with these cities. But you were also mentioning that you work in real estate.
Yep.
And that you said there's the potential debt default that we're seeing these big cities turning to ghost towns. Do you want to explain what you're talking about with that?
Sure. So right now we invest in bonds that have commercial real estate loans as the collateral. So we invest in bonds that have malls, hotels, warehouses, and office. These are large mortgages that are 20, 50, 100, 200, $300 million. And so the other day, and I've been studying the issue of the border and how it's affected these children. And I do believe when I was reading some of the news about the Venezuelan gangs taking over neighborhoods in Denver, and I was thinking, well, geez, like, where did the migrants go that came across the border? They were being bussed and flown to many of the sanctuary cities. And so I'm just really numbers and analytical. And so I went to ChatGPT that knows everything, by the way. It's crazy. And I said to ChatGPT, I said, tell me the top 20 cities in the United States where the migrants that came across the border were flown and bussed. And it gave me a list of cities. And I looked at it and I was like, holy moly. I was like, 15 of the cities out of the 20 cities where all these migrants were bussed have the most distressed commercial real estate in the country. These are the cities that are in decline. There is such trouble right now in these Democrat-run cities in commercial real estate. There are defaults happening right now on large Class A and Class B office building mortgages that are as bad as during the financial crisis. I'm talking about tens of billions of defaults that are happening right now. Americans don't even know about this, okay? And so you ask me, hey, was there other consequences to all the migration that came in here? And I say, absolutely there was. That many of these cities, like say, let's just talk about one of them and talk about San Francisco, okay? Like, I'm proud that America led the world in tech innovation, okay? San Francisco is an unbelievable city, okay? Rich with culture, diversity, free thinking. I'm in favor of all that type of stuff, okay? Very, very innovative in the tech industry. Incredible, incredible city. San Francisco right now is doomed, okay? It's in a death spiral, okay? That the commercial real estate in San Francisco is so distressed that just 4 or 5 years ago, the occupancy in San Francisco was 90%, okay? Right now, there are so many buildings where the occupancy went to 60%, 50%, 40%. Do you know what happens when you go under about 70 in an office building, okay? You don't have enough income to pay the mortgage debt anymore, okay? You cannot go below 75 or 70%. These ones
let
that
alone
are at
maintenance,
50.
right?
Pardon me?
Let alone maintenance.
No, it's a doom loop. So basically, a number of flawed policies, okay? And I didn't really intend to talk about policies in some of these cities. You know, I'm really here to talk about this movie and about protecting and saving children. But some of these things are connected. And so in San Francisco, they made some really big mistakes, in my opinion. Number one, that they decriminalized theft and that you don't even get a ticket if you steal stuff under $1,000. Like, first of all, I can't even believe that. Like, I think that if a kid is 13, 14, 15 years old and they shoplift some gum and some other shit, I think they should call the cops and make a huge stink out of it. Like, that's the way our culture, like, I don't know, maybe I'm an old schooler, but I think that stealing is wrong and you should make a huge deal out of it. Now, what did that do? That there are pharmacies and CVS like that in San Francisco, all of the retail in the downtown business district right now, because of some of these flawed decisions that the city government and the state made, right? They're closing. They're like, why would we subject our employees to all these people that come in and smash and grab stuff? They walk right out of the store. They fill up all shopping carts and trash bags and they walk out. It's like absolute lawlessness. Okay, that's one. Two, that their policies about these open-air drug and decriminalizing or not prosecuting for fentanyl and heroin, that's a big deal, okay? They're letting people use drugs like that openly and saying, let them do it. Like that's cuckoo. Like, that's so dumb, okay? Addiction is a huge problem in our country, okay? It's killing people. And so what that did is that invited lots of crime okay, and homelessness. And so San Francisco has an incredibly tough time right now with crime and homelessness. And so what is that doing? It's making the larger corporations that lease the office buildings not renew. So office building leases are 10 years. So every year, 10% are gonna expire. And you know what's happening? Nobody's renewing in San Francisco. That these companies are not going to subject their employees to going in that downtown area that is so bad, because they're putting their employees at risk. So some of these cities already had flawed policies, okay, that were putting their cities in decline. They doubled down for some reason and welcomed hundreds of thousands of these migrants into these cities, and now are having to support them. And then, unfortunately, as the news has clearly reported, many of the migrants are exacerbating the issues with crime, because there's really no plan to educate them and train them and give them jobs. Like you can't bring migrants in and just give them free housing, okay? Because they're going to go out and hustle, and unfortunately, some of them wind up stealing. So everything I just said about San Francisco, like a third of all, or a half to a third of all the mortgages on office buildings in San Francisco are underwater. That means that they're worth less than the mortgage debt, and they're defaulting left and right. So there are some really big consequences going on right now with policies in some of these Democrat cities. Everything I just said about San Francisco, let's go to Philadelphia. I mean, Philadelphia has incredible history going all the way, hundreds of years in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is a wonderful city, okay? Philadelphia, it just pains me to see all of the videos about the downtown district and all the crime and homelessness and tent cities and drug use. I mean, there are people all hunched over on fentanyl, and there's hundreds and hundreds of them. And that the same thing there, that nobody's renewing the leases. There's one building on Market Street in there that it was in one of these deals called a SASB deal. It's a bond deal because the mortgage loan's so big, it's like $250 million or something like that. And so they just make one bond out of one mortgage, and they cut it up into A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay, that the A is going to lose well over half the money. Every single class is going to get wiped out. So say you've got a $250 million mortgage. It got appraised at like $325 million. And you're like, okay, you think they could get back the $250 million? This one building that I'm talking about right now, we think that it's going to sell for 50 or 60 million. It's going to lose 80% on the mortgage. It's like worthless. Like, you don't understand what happens. Like,
who's going to buy it?
Nobody's buying it, because right now,
so it's worth zero.
That's right. So when these offices go into decline, okay, when society is unraveling, okay, all of these policies are so bad, it's making real estate like this worthless, because unless you have a tenant that's willing to sign up and to go to work in Philadelphia, which you'd have to be out of your mind to go in there. It's like a war zone.
That's why we're in West Virginia.
It's a war zone right now, and it's getting worse every single day. So
let me tell you, I'll interject. I lived in New York City for a while, and the prices were high. But that wasn't what made me leave the city. It was the escalating civil unrest. And so I had seen these protests bubbling up, and I thought, man, you combine that with the high cost, I'm gonna jump the river. And I went to the Jersey side. I said, it's a little bit cheaper here, and I'm away from the mass protests all the time. It's probably better if I'm here. Then a couple bombs were planted on 25th Street and in Jersey City. Some makeshift explosives were planted and blew up. And I thought, things are getting crazy in this country. So I moved to, I immediately then moved to the southern portion of still the New York Metro, but this is in Bayonne. And once I, with the continuing escalation of cost and the constant social unrest and what I saw as an inability to, I saw escalation. I'm like, okay, South Jersey. So then I moved down basically to the Philly suburbs. And I thought, I'm on the other side of Philly. We're in a smaller metro. We're in the suburbs. We live in a bunch of trees. The prices are a lot cheaper. There's no riots and protests. Then the George Floyd riots happened. And I thought, okay, well, we're not in Philadelphia. Then the riots crossed the bridge. And I thought, I'm getting out of here. That was a big deal. We started immediately looking for property which was in Western Maryland or West Virginia. And then when the lockdowns happened, we were out. The property is substantially cheaper, and now we're in the middle of nowhere because I don't want to be anywhere near what's going on. And since then, I fortunate to say that I don't know if you call it my skittishness or my ability to just see the patterns as they're unfolding.
Will to survive.
Perhaps, but I felt like the paths that were laid out before me in these locations only went to bad places.
Yep.
And I'm like, even in the best case scenario, I'm not going to be happy with the prices as they're jumping and jumping and jumping. Now, my apartment that I lived in when I was in New York, which was $1,950 a month for a 2-bedroom, is something, I think it's like $4,000. It's like $4,000, and this is
Crazy.
This is, I think, what is this? What are we? 7 years, maybe 8 years later. It's doubled in price. So now we're out far away from all the stuff, but we can see what these cities are like and what's been going on with the crime. I mean, you look at Colorado, San Francisco, and they have the poo department. San Francisco has a poop department that literally it's like the fire department, but for spraying down poop on the streets because there's so much of it. And so, anyway, to your point, this is exactly why we're not there anymore. And we're in a building right now we built from scratch. It is actually amazing. People ask all the time. It's 38 feet in the center, 25-foot sides. You've got large concrete pad. There's an internal structure, and the studio that we're in was built internal to a larger building, and we're on this big property in West Virginia. And people are like, you built this from scratch. It's cheaper, it's safer, there's more space, and we don't have to deal with the unrest, the chaos, and the homeless. And that's unfortunate because we did want to build a studio in New Jersey. We would have been there, but the state's mismanaged. The urban areas are horribly mismanaged. And so we said, we're going to invest in West Virginia. And I'll tell you this, West Virginia loves it. Now we're setting up our coffee shop in West Virginia. We're investing in real estate out here. We don't want to be anywhere near these cities and their failed policies.
When lockdown started, I was still in New York. I'm from New York. And I was thinking how if they shut down the city, it could get to be like the 70s again. My grandfather was a cop in the city in the 70s, and his stories were just dystopian. The city was on fire constantly. He said he had dead bodies every day. And then people would say, well, if the city dies, does it come back? And I'd be like, well, yeah, that city came back. But with the policies that are happening now that you're talking about, and the way we're busing in all these people, I don't know how you dig yourself out of the hole. Like, how does a city get out of that?
Yeah, they just need to change course. I mean, I think that some of these things, again, like I don't blame the Democrats for some of their ideology to try to be kind to people, help people, give people opportunity, and give them services. Because I have a big heart myself.
I'm gonna pull the mic up a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have a big heart myself. It's just that some of those policies, in order to execute them, have had very, very great difficulty. And so, like, defunding the police in some of these cities, I mean, it really is not a good idea at all. Right. And so, it's really caused so much crime. I mean, look at St. Louis. St. Louis was a great city. The downtown St. Louis is in such trouble. And, we trade the commercial real estate debt. Do you know what it did? It made all the office buildings in the suburbs worth more. And so there's a trend right now where, because I'm just measuring things, I'm like, what is outlook for certain asset classes that I'm trading? Like, so in office, I'm like, well, suburban office is an asset class. Then there's the downtown market in the asset class. And then I rank things by whether each of these cities are Democrat or Republican controlled. And so unfortunately, I'm just a math and numbers guy. I predict if things are going to go up or if I predict if things are going to go down. And the reality is, and I'm not the only one, like every smart guy that trades these commercial mortgage bonds agrees with me that the policies in those Democrat controlled cities and the outlook in many of the cities that I mentioned, Denver, St. Louis, Philly, Chicago is in serious trouble. Okay. That the outlook as well in those cities is negative.
So the question is, how do you short them?
Actually,
I'm only half kidding.
Yeah, no, there is the ability, just like in the Big Short in the movie, and that had discussed how people had shorted these derivatives that are all connected to these bonds that we trade. There is a market in the commercial mortgage-backed securities to short some of these structures that I'm trading right now. And some people, in fact, right now have very, very big shorts on. Some very big famous people are shorting the deals that have very heavy office concentrations, and they're betting that it's going to continue to get worse. So it's funny that you pointed that out. But
what we've got, during the lockdowns in New York, these buildings became ghost towns, as it were. I mean, people weren't going to work, so the buildings were vacant, basically. For the smaller restaurants that were on the first floor of many of these taller buildings, maybe not even super tall, but maybe you get a building that's like 4 or 5 stories. First floor is going to be a restaurant. They've got $20,000 to $30,000 worth of food product that they have to sell before it expires. This is why restaurants have specials, because they got to move that product. When they get locked down, the food's spoiled. They can't reopen. You have to buy another $30,000 worth of goods. You've already lost. You couldn't sell that. Now you're in the hole. So a lot of them just went out of business. What happens to a building that is, 10 stories when it becomes vacant? Nobody buys it. Have we seen, I've seen in other countries abandoned skyscrapers, but what is New York going to look like? What is San Francisco going to look like when you have abandoned skyscrapers? Do they start to fall apart? Do the windows break?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a great example in St. Louis. AT&T had this one building. It's a huge building. It's like 35 stories tall. They took over the whole building. Their lease expired, and they said, you know what, we're gonna, someone owned the building, and I think they were leasing it, and then they said, we don't need the space. We're gonna consolidate somewhere else. They haven't been able to release the building. This building that was worth hundreds of millions of dollars, you know what it sold for several years ago? $5 million. Okay, like $5 million.
Wow.
And the problem is that the expenses, the way I understand it on this building, are about $5 million a year. So somebody paid $5 million, and now it's costing them $5 million a year. It's already been 3 or 4 years, and they're way upside down. They're probably going to give it back again. So to answer your question, yes, there are buildings that are literally worthless because there's no demand. You just need the demand.
It's really something that really freaked me out is there are these channels on Instagram that the urban explorers, and they go into abandoned buildings. One of the abandoned buildings was a food court in Chicago, in like a 7-story building downtown, like a very prominent area. And I remember I see this, Instagram suggests they recommend this clip, and it's like inside a skyscraper or inside a building in Chicago, and then I recognize where they are, and I'm like, holy crap.
Wow.
15 years ago, I was eating Sbarro there. And this is the city. This is the heart of the city. That was freaky to see. I could not believe that in such a dense area this could happen. But, outside of the fact that, I should say, outside of the whether or not a business can operate, the root causes you mentioned is how bad these cities have become. And you've got these videos out of Chicago where people are, there's a video of a guy, he's just shooting into the window of department stores. These mass mobs, these flash mobs are raiding these department stores. Nobody wants to be there. I remember during the 2020 riots in Chicago, it was a big deal. I can't remember exactly what happened, but something happened where there was mass protests, and the city, I think they raised the bridges to keep the protests, to push them in the direction of residential neighborhoods. And aldermen, who are basically the politicians representing certain neighborhoods in the city, were freaking out, being like, you have a financial district in the city, a commercial district, where these rioters are headed, and you push them into people's homes by doing this. How could you even end up living in a residential area knowing that these kinds of things are happening?
I'm glad I'm in West Virginia now. I'm glad I'm out of New York.
But what happens next?
Right.
So with everything you're seeing, what does happen next?
Yeah, there's been your story is very similar. There's been I also trade bonds backed by residential mortgage loans, and although that market's very healthy right now, really because there's a housing shortage, and in part caused by some of the work at home and COVID. That the Fed lowered interest rates to very low levels. It made houses very, very affordable. Most consumers have already refinanced their homes at all-time record low rates. That in part is actually making the housing shortage a little bit worse because people are very hesitant to move. Because if you move right now, your mortgage payment just to move into the same house will go up 30%. So forget about upgrading. So a lot of people don't really want to move. They're happy where they are. And that, created less turnover. Buying and selling is what turnover is. And, but to talk about your story about how you made the decision to have a different life somewhere else, there's migration happening that also affects our analysis of what the commercial properties are worth. There's a lot of migration coming out of California, coming out of Illinois, coming out of the Northeast, and they're going to other states like Florida and Texas. And they're Democrats and Republicans that are migrating. So there's a big migration happening across the country right now. They're going, some people are moving because of the taxes. The taxes are very high at the state level at some of these states. They're moving because of some of the policies that I talked about a little bit earlier. One of the best business guys in the world, Ken Griffin and Citadel. I mean, the guy trades 40% of every trade on the stock market right now. So he's built the best software in the world. It's usurped the New York Stock Exchange. I mean, like all these exchange. I mean, he is the exchange for the stock market in the whole world now. And he's created lots of other exchanges. He's built some of the most advanced technology. Illinois should be wrapping their arms around a successful guy like that. He's one of, he doesn't have like a public stock to look at like Elon and these other guys, but I think he's for sure one of the richest guys in the world, very quietly, okay? That a state like Illinois and Chicago, they should be embracing an entrepreneur like that that's so innovative in finance, and they pissed him off. He got pissed off being there, and he uprooted himself out of Chicago, and he moved to Miami, where I am. And he just moved his whole headquarters into Miami, and Miami's booming right now. There's so many people moving to Miami. We've got newcomers where I live, and they're all coming from California. They're coming from New York. They're coming from Massachusetts, Maine, Connecticut. I mean, they're coming from everywhere.
Do these big migrations you're talking about, going to Texas or going to Florida, they look good right now. Do you see a potential for that kind of turning around and being a bad thing later on if people bring in their policies that they still vote the same way? Or what are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, these types of trends, when they start, they run for quite some time. So I don't really think that there'd be a lot of things that could change. Elon, certainly one of the smartest men on earth. He's so innovative in the different companies that Elon built. Elon picked up and said, I've had enough for lots of reasons with California. And now he moved out. So he's not happy with California. And
he moved twice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't he move and move back?
Yeah. And then I think he just moved the other headquarters, right?
Yeah.
And actually, I would make a plea right now to Elon, and I'd ask Elon, because Elon had offered when Sound of Freedom came out, and Elon is an incredible advocate for free speech, okay? And when Sound of Freedom came out, he saw that the media was attacking Sound of Freedom. I mean, there were 30 or 40 articles that had said QAnon and right-wing and propaganda, and the left just attacked Sound of Freedom. The same thing happened with Sound of Freedom. The theaters were trying to block it. They were reducing the theaters like what's happening to us right now. Elon saw that, and Elon Musk made a tweet, okay? And he said, I've built a movie streaming platform that could stream Sound of Freedom, just like Amazon, for video on demand. And I won't charge a penny, and I could stream this. And at that time, the producers, including my very good friend Sean Wolfington, who was one of the producers on Sound of Freedom, for whatever the reasons were, they decided not to do it. I would invite Elon right now. I mean, I'm the producer here, and tell him that when we end in our theaters, that we would love to work with X, a champion of free speech, and we could stream. This would be one of the first major feature films that we would stream on his platform.
He did it for Walsh's movie
on X. Yeah. I think he's brought one or two documentaries now, and so we would love to work with him and have the video on demand and bring it through X, a champion of free speech, because I do think that right now we're dealing with censorship. we're dealing with the media that doesn't like this. A lot of these things you guys are talking about, which is just nonsense. I mean, our movie is about protecting and saving kids, which really, like, this topic, like, what is more important than this right now? And honestly, like, we might have gotten off track a little bit just talking about migration and the city politics and cities that are going down. But unfortunately, some of the issue with these children, it is unfortunately all connected to the flawed policy of migration and letting too many migrants into our country without the proper amount of controls. Okay, so that's one of the things that caused some of the exploitation of children, and it's a little bit about what our movie is about. I think you were talking about something else and interrupted me, but this movie is so creative. Okay, let me just tell you, the movie is very, very good. That there are dream sequences in this movie that have Jesus, okay, that he's dealing with an awful situation held by his captors, okay? So the children that they're abused and they're beaten, and it's a very dark, almost dungeon like a place that they're being held in a basement with orange dimly lit lights, and they're all packed into a room and sleeping together at night. I mean, it's really awful conditions. And so that Jesus, the hero in the story, he always dreamed of being a soccer player. He thought, as you'll see in the movie, that he was going to America to go to soccer camp. And the trafficker showed him a pamphlet and said, hey, we're going to bring you to this soccer camp. And so part of the story showed him dreaming of getting to go to a soccer camp. And what happened? It turned into a nightmare. And the film is so creative that our director, Mohit, okay, that there's dream sequences that where Jesus, because in order to deal with what he had to deal with there, he kind of comes out of his body and he starts dreaming of being a soccer superstar. And so these dream sequences have him like in London with 100,000 fans, and he's dribbling and playing soccer on a professional level. And the whole crowd is cheering for him. And instead of all these dark colors, the whole screen in the theater, it lights up and there's hope. Okay. So like this film should win an Oscar, in my opinion. Like it is so good. These dream sequences, it gives the Jesus a break from what he's going through. And do you know who needs a break too in this movie? Is the audience. Okay. Because then it lets the audience have hope and all the colors on the screen change. And then like that, bam, it's back into a very, very harsh world for these children. And so the movie is rich, okay? It's rich. The story is very rich. There's another dream sequence of a shaman character. The shaman character is part of a lot of the Mexican culture for them. A lot of the Mexicans, they believe in Catholicism, and they also believe in a long history of the Day of the Dead. They kind of worship all of their ancestors that came before them. And this director, Mohit, also, to make the story rich with imagery, weaved character, a shaman character that appears. And he appears to protect the child. He prays for the child in this movie. He says, Lord, and this is a scene, it's a flashback to his birth. He says, Lord, protect this child and help him to achieve his destiny. And you know what the destiny is of Jesus? His destiny, even though he was a mute, okay? This story has the hero that can't speak, okay? And exacerbating the issue of being captured and put into slavery. His destiny was to stand up with courage and fight back against his captors. And at the end of this story, okay, that Jesus, he found his voice, okay? And it's very emotional in our story. And he screams, and he had had enough. And never in his life had the hero in this story ever spoken one word, okay? And he screams because he had had enough. And some of the police that were onto what was happening were lurking around. And it was his scream that alerted the police. And they brought them in, and they saved all of the children. And in this story, Jesus found his voice. He inspired me to have a voice, okay? And to stick up for all these kids.
How aware were you of all this stuff before you saw the movie?
Oh boy. I mean, I'm real much smarter on it right now after, it's been since about March. I saw the movie, as I said, I was very emotional. I thought the movie was also excellent, like I'm saying right now. I was touched by it. I talked to the director for quite some time, and then right away I said, I'm going to support you. Since then, I've learned quite a bit about child trafficking in both in corporations, unfortunately, that are using vendors that employ child labor. I've learned quite a bit about the border issue, like we've talked about here, where there's a clear problem where unaccompanied minors came into the United States and they're now being used in the sex trade. And so, but yeah, I mean, as I was saying, the story is it's very creative, and I really enjoy a lot of the dream sequences, and it's very inspiring at the end of the story when the children are saved, and so I really recommend that people go and see the movie. I hope we overcome some of these issues right now with the theaters, and I'd make a plea to all of the theaters out there to please consider how important this message is. And
well, what's the remedy, right? So we learn of this crisis in the film. What can people do, and where does this message lead? Is this a voting thing?
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, as far as our film goes right now, I mean, part of why I came here today is that I'm trying to raise awareness on the topic. I think that there's nothing more important than protecting kids in this country. Honestly, it's like the kids are our future, and So that I hope that people could understand what this issue is and learn more about it. I mean, that's one. Number two, I would really recommend that people go and see the movie. You will learn so much, and you will feel what I felt, okay? And so if people could go and see this movie, and then I think that people should demand to be able to see the movie and tell their theaters and speak up and say, we unfortunately, they've cut us out of a lot of the cities. So we're in a lot of the major cities. So the people that live in a lot of the major cities now should go and see the movie and fill up the seats and speak up. So, I mean, I think that's one step here.
When I saw Sound of Freedom at the Capitol, I saw a lot of politicians who were deeply affected by it. And then my hope was, now that they've been affected by a good piece of film, they can go enact some change. And I've seen a lot of them raise hell, here and there. I don't know how much change we've seen yet, but maybe if you don't get to show it at the Capitol yet, you can maybe send screeners out to all politicians or to,
Well, I mean, I would certainly welcome Kamala. I would love to meet Kamala. And
everyone should see it, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I'd love to meet Kamala. I'd love to arrange a screening for her and all of her constituents. I'd love to offer to have a screening for President Trump and ask him whether or not he would like to arrange a screening. I could do it at his New Jersey Country Club. I know that he screened Sound of Freedom, but I think that the first step, like this movie, is a call to action. I believe that the movie is a call to action, and it can create change.
So what is the action?
I think that new legislation should be enacted to try to help and protect these kids and to change some of these flawed border policies and to create a system that would vet all of these sponsors and to make sure there are weekly checks to make sure that these children are protected.
In the primary season for the Democratic Party back in, I think it was 2019, might have been 2020, every single candidate said that they would decriminalize border crossings. So this means if you decriminalize border crossings, you don't stop the individuals. I mean, if they get stopped, it's a give me your information, please. It's a civil infraction, which means you'll have a hearing at some later date. That's what we've been seeing under the Biden administration. The people who cross the border illegally, I mean, this is the challenge of politics right now. When trying to figure out how we stop this, the reality here is Donald Trump had a policy while he was president, which the media referred to as family separation. The reality of that is, if an adult man has a young child with him, we don't know if it's a child predator or the parent. And so the policy is intending to, I don't know whether you can say it was effective or not, but the general idea is, okay, we need to take this kid aside and ask this child who they are, who's their parent, and make sure they're actually with their parent because we're trying to stop trafficking. When Trump tried to do this, they said that he was just separating children from their parents as a threat to terrify people who might come. Now we have, under the Biden administration, when someone crosses the border, they get their name written down and sent on their merry way. We know from Dr. Phil, of all people, not a conservative guy, that that there's many children who have numbers on their arms, which are phone numbers for child sex traffickers, and CBP just says, go on with it, have fun, I guess. And you've had CBP agents admit they know that these children are going to these rings. So the challenge, I suppose, and perhaps the reason why you've gotten the pushback and the reason why they're taking it out of these theaters is it's a motivating factor against the Democratic Party for those that are paying attention to what's going on. For the longest time, the media said that Kamala Harris was the border czar. Now they're vehemently denying she was ever the border czar. No, that's not true. It's not a real title. Well, it's never a real title. It was a colloquial term to represent that she was supposed to deal with the crisis, the security crisis at the border, which she did not do. Donald Trump is the border candidate. Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, Democrats, they're not. When I look at the pushback your film gets and Sound of Freedom, my conclusion is not that they feel politically vulnerable by this problem being brought to the forefront, but that they want the problem to persist. There's a lot of arguments for why that may be.
Oh boy, that's awful.
Well, one of the arguments is the United States is below replacement rate fertility. The fractional reserve monetary system that we have cannot be sustained unless we have job numbers going up. You can't add jobs without people to take jobs. So if replacement fertility is down, we're looking at, in a generation or two, serious recession or depression repercussions when the job numbers you literally cannot increase. You're going to get your quarterly jobs report or whatever. You're going to be down 100 because there aren't people. So what we get then is the Democrat policy of just let them all come. We need these jobs numbers filled. Give them work permits. There's a question of why the government is giving work permits to these unvetted random people who are crossing illegally. It boosts the numbers. It boosts the job numbers. Now, the fascinating thing is you're mentioning these buildings. It's all connected. Nobody wants to work in these cities anymore. The buildings are collapsing. Vacancy rates are going up. These buildings won't be able to sustain themselves. There's going to be an economic crisis that is not going to be alleviated by just flooding the system with more potential workers when there's no jobs. So you need a functioning economy with real growth, and you need the people to work those jobs. And it seems like we're not going to be able to have either. So when I look at, to bring it back to your film and how it's all connected, I think there's a really obvious reason why this and Sound of Freedom are blocked. If the American people are aware of what the border being open brings, then the American people vote against those who have stated in the past several years they want it to be a civil infraction, not a criminal violation, to enter this country outside of one of our ports of entry. If that's the case, and it is, I mean, every single Democratic candidate raised their hand saying this was their policy. What we're looking, even the moderate ones, what we're looking at now is if you vote Democrat, the numbers will likely increase. You will see more non-citizens in your community centers, in your schools. They will need to find housing for them. Perhaps these abandoned skyscrapers will turn into migrant housing. Hotels already have.
New York does it.
New York does it. Luxury hotels are turning into this. So the end result is people watching City of Dreams or Sound of Freedom, ultimately, it's a positive pressure for Republicans and Donald Trump to come in office and say, we need security at the border. And maybe you still want large migration, but it can't be at this level because you'll have to vet the people coming in and making sure these children are not being trafficked and are victims.
Yeah, if you're looking around America and you feel like your country's suffering and disease, and then you go to the border, it's like you're looking at the skin of the country and there's the lesions. And you're like, oh, this is where the problem's starting. One of them, because it's just collapsing at the border. I have a letter, it's published in one of my articles at Scanner at scnr.com that I got from Kerry Lake from a patrol officer who's like, they don't care what's happening here. Everyone's coming through and we're just sending them out into the country. We're giving them flights. And he's like, I'm just told to do it, And these people are really concerned.
I really do think it has to do with population collapse. You like I talk about it all the time. You go back to the 2000s. several reports showed that in the 2000s, fertility among conservatives was 2.01 and among liberals was 1.43. So we were averaging around like 1.8 or 1.9 below replacement. That means in a generation when, 20 years is a long time, you get a lot of retirements in that period, there will be less new workers entering and more exiting. So what happens with COVID, I'll tell you, I'll give you this example. Local casino, Charlestown Races, they used to have, so Saturday, I think it might be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I'm not sure, but Friday, Saturday for sure, they have the horse races. They're fun. Mm-hmm. You pick the horse with the silliest name. If it wins, woohoo. Or you can say show or place or whatever you want to do. You can do some pretty crazy bets at the horse track. And you could bet 10 cents. Yeah. 10 cents. It's fun. But they had a restaurant. And the restaurant had cascade seating where you would order food, sit down with your friends, and then you could go up to the counter and say, give me $1 on, Goofy Goober the horse or whatever. Then you'd eat food. That's all gone. And I asked the staff there, this is like one of the best attractions. Kids are allowed to come. So the parents can bring their kids to the racetrack to have dinner. Why did you guys close? And they said, we can't get the staff to reopen. We don't have the people to do it. I said, well, okay. I mean, the jobs are rebounding. Certainly there are people who need jobs. And they said, no, it's that everybody retired. So they also had poker dealers. This was another big issue. How come you guys went from 50 tables 10 years ago to 9 tables now? And, well, the big portion of that is too many casinos are opening. And this is a whole other story about social degradation. But they said the real reason we dropped so many tables is because the dealers all retired. Yep. And I said, you can't find new dealers? Nope. So what we're seeing now is with COVID, there was a wave of retirements. A lot of people who are at retirement age or who are nearing it and maybe want to take an early retirement decided, look, I got 2 years till retirement. They locked everything down. I'm not working anyway. I'm done.
I think it's happening everywhere. I know so many parents in this area who are having trouble finding a pediatrician because every pediatrician is either closed or not taking any more.
That's right.
And that's really crazy.
The other component of this, too, is what I refer to as our managerial crisis. A lot of people on the right refer to this as DEI. The problem that we're facing, they say it's a diversity, equity, inclusion is what's like these planes and the wheels falling off or whatever, and the failed mechanics. I think it's not about DEI. I think DEI is an effort to alleviate the managerial crisis. Older individuals, boomers, people who are in their 60s, once COVID hit, said, I'm done. And we're talking about a chief mechanic, perhaps. The younger guys don't know how to operate and run this stuff, and they don't have enough staff to replenish when all these people left with expertise. So now what they're saying is, well, we need to bring on new people, diversity. And don't get me wrong, there's a difference between, like, certainly if there is someone who's capable to do the job and you don't hire them, instead go for the diversity individual, you are contributing to it as well. I think the real issue is that older people are leaving in larger numbers. They're taking their skills with them, and there aren't enough younger people to fill these jobs. I think the system doesn't want to admit it. I think the government doesn't want to admit we do not have enough children. And right now, let's take a look. Let's ask the question, if there is no mass migration, unchecked open borders is what we're looking at, and children are getting trafficked because of it. Why won't they deport the criminals? Why won't they deport these people who have committed murders? Where do we end up in 20 years with a I think average fertility right now in the United States is like 1.7 or it might be 1.6. For every 2 people that leave in the next 20 years, only 1.5 come in. A guarantee that our jobs numbers will go down. We will have a recession and possibly a depression. Democrat policy is then open the doors and let everyone come because we need people. The end result is we don't know who these people are. We can't vet them. This is what happens when you panic. We're getting now these crises in various cities. Local communities are extremely upset. The machine then attempts to tamp down on anybody who speaks out against this because the machine is dying. So if we, I mean,
yeah, I'd want to see numbers that would back up some of that. over like a 5 to 10 year period, because I think that we already have natural migration that's been coming in. The problem is that it accelerated to such an extent over the past 4 years. So you just can't. We've always had a very logical migration that was all coming into the United States.
A million per year.
That's what I'm saying. So that we'd have to really study all that data to see what the fall off is that you're talking about. I mean, the wave of the migrants that came in, 13 million or whatever the number is of both the legal and the illegal, that's caused some of the problem with harming the children. For sure, because because a lot of people that have come in, they don't have jobs. Some of them are they're minors, like we've said, but they're causing social unrest across a lot of the cities. They're also creating a burden on many of the cities. I mean, there's so many programs right now that are doling out $20,000, per family or per person for free rent, free. You mentioned New York City earlier.
Yeah.
That's like that right now, because I trade the hotel debt. Right now in New York City, 20% of every single hotel room in New York City is the city is paying for migrants to stay at. 20%. I mean, there's like billions and billions of dollars. They're feeding the migrants and they're putting them up right in New York City.
A lot of family who are waiters.
I was on CNBC, and Brian Sullivan, who I've known for 20 years, I've been on his show at different networks that he's been on over my career. And he mentioned on the show, he was like, I can't believe it, John, that more recently, just in this last year, now there's kids that are 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, like young kids with no parent around, and they're selling fruit and water in the subway system. And they're on every single platform. They don't speak English, and they're hustling. Like that's new. That's new for New York City. Like that had never been seen before.
1800s maybe, early 1800s. That's
so
like old.
That some of these changes are right in front of us right now, and it's impacting society for us. And then underneath some of this is the fact that what our movie is highlighting, that a lot of the children, unfortunately, are wind up being exploited. Another thing that's interesting that I heard too, that's shocking to me, and it talks about prostitution, which is another issue. That's sort of in the category of the exploitation of women, which I'm against. Okay, and so prostitution is another issue that's a serious issue here in our country. And one of the things that I read said that 60% of women that become prostitutes come out of the foster program. So these are like children that are already in broken homes. And that's a program that has monitoring of the kids. What in the world is going to happen to these 300,000 to 500,000 kids that came across the border undocumented, and there's no way to check up on them?
Yeah.
How many of those are going to wind up becoming prostitutes when they have no guardian?
I'm fairly certain the thing I talked about earlier about the MS-13 in Virginia, that victim, I believe, was a runaway from a foster home. And it's not rare also. So they say they check up on them, but there's a lot of issues.
I met, there's a survivor that went to the red carpet with us for our premiere in Los Angeles. And I spent some time talking to her. I can't recall her name. She has a video on our website talking about her experiences. And it's just awful. She was trafficked at 8 years old, and she was doing like 20 tricks a day, and 8 and 9 and 10 years old. So she told me her whole story, and that the people that trafficked her had hundreds of Polaroid pictures of all the children that they were in contact with from other bad guys. And so there was this underground network that was here in the U.S.
Oh, yeah.
And she was trafficked from Central America, and that was going on 15 years ago. So this isn't something that's new, okay? I think that it did explode more recently. But it's something that's always, been lurking behind the scenes, and something that collectively as a society, okay, that we should all be addressing together. And then the big companies that are out there that make our goods, they need to be addressing this and make sure that they are not employing child labor. All of the big tech companies, like we mentioned before, like Facebook and Zuckerberg, they should be doing everything they can to protect our children. And I know that they're working on it right now. I mean,
We've heard the
they're trying
stories about the bridges at the border and the parents leaving pictures of their daughters all over the bridges, and they've all been taken. They don't know where. I remember some congressman, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, telling about how there was a skyscraper in New York City of a young woman telling her story. She was in that, skyscraper as like a hostage, and Johns would come in all day long, underage. And she spent her years like that, stuck in this place. It's unbelievable how widespread it is and happening in all the places you wouldn't think it is.
I just go back to the politics on it. I don't see, when you have a conversation like this, how the current administration, the only real action one could take is to support candidates who are calling for border security, and it's not the Democratic Party.
Nope. It's because I don't know. It's like they oversee it and want it to happen.
But this is the big challenge politically with most things we talk about. We want to believe and we hope that there can be a bipartisan solution and that we can reach out to anyone, be it a Democrat, Libertarian, or Republican, and say, we got to deal with these problems. But the moment you entertain the solutions to this and you look at the current administration failing to do anything about it, the end result is the Democrats don't seem to be motivated to solve this problem. In fact, quite the opposite. You then run into diehard Democratic voters who are just going to default to, you're a Trump supporter, you're crazy, you're a fascist, whatever. And then this is the bind we end up in with most of the problems I think we see today. Certainly with what we're looking at in terms of these buildings and a potential default is not a good thing. Why isn't there an effort to solve the problem? I don't think it's a lack of awareness. I think they know full well exactly what's going on. There's no guarantee, I suppose, that voting Republican changes it, but at least one party is saying, hey, let's stop bad thing. The other party is ignoring it, or at least pretending like they're doing something and doing nothing.
Yeah. I used to think we could all agree on protecting children until the last maybe 5 or 6 years when the way everyone defines protecting children became different. There's people on the left who say protecting children is giving them puberty blockers now, and people on the right saying that's bad. But I want to protect the child. So even when it comes down to that, our definition of protecting innocence has changed, and it spreads out from there to the border and all these things. So that's why I don't know how you fix this politically. I believe the border should be shut down right now, and we could handle that way better. But
I think that it's like to fix, you've got to get tough on folks that exploit the children. For example, I read something that said that in California they were against increasing sentencing for the Johns that hire prostitutes, as long as the girls were over 15, 16, 17, 18, and that it was supposedly, right now, I could be wrong here, but I believe I read something like this. Maybe you guys could search that, but that there was some legislation that was being shot down or something about being tough on the men that are hiring these women. And right now, it's only a misdemeanor. So if you hire a girl for sex and they're only like 16 or 17, it's a misdemeanor. And they're kind of blaming the minors. Now, yeah, so like I thought I was under the understanding that if you like sleep with a girl and it's a minor, you could get in a lot of trouble. Like forget about it being a prostitute.
Put away.
That's what
forever.
I'm saying. So like, I think that one of the things is that you need to be really tough. It's supply and demand. So I think we need to get really tough on the demand side of the equation. And that's going to be on a federal level. So that's like politician. That's your congressman, your senators, the president. They've got to get tough and talk tough and take action because we've got to squash the demand. So that, and then the cities and the counties, they could definitely deal with the demand. And so it's going to be a big effort, I think. Like, how do you help protect these kids and put an end to a lot of this stuff? I think it's a joint effort. It's going to take corporations. It's going to take philanthropies. It's going to take filmmakers like what we're doing right now. It's going to take influencers and celebrities that could all talk about the issue.
It's awareness and acceptance, but a lot of these places make money off of it. This business, people are making money off of it all over the place. I don't think a lot of these evil people are willing to give up that money.
Yeah, child trafficking, I read, is like something like $100 billion industry worldwide, $100 to $150 billion industry by child labor and sex trafficking. That's like a staggeringly big number of money that's being made.
Shocking. Yeah, I think the more you talk about it, hopefully people accept the reality. You know, I mentioned earlier the thing I wrote about in Ohio with Alex Rosen. Those are unorganized people who have this appetite for evil, right? Going after children using Facebook and other platforms, Roblox and whatever games they're using to talk to kids and lure them out of their houses. So there's that you got to deal with. And then the stuff you're talking about, you're dealing with like the government helping, gangs helping. You're talking about the border, and it's very organized, and they're using these online tools. That's got to be completely stopped somehow. But it doesn't seem, as of, like I said, as of this year, it doesn't seem like they're doing much to stop it. They're doing much to stop people who are saying things politically they don't like, but when it comes to the kids, what?
Or movies.
Or movies.
Bringing up the issue and building awareness has been blocked, has been banned. A Sound of Freedom and your film show that there's an interest in stopping this narrative.
Because there's money in it. And I really do think it's because there's money in it, and it's because a lot of these people partake in it, and they don't see it as evil. It is evil.
Well, that's horrible. That can't be the case. That's
well, when you see all these news stories, when you see all these news stories,
it's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
When you see all these news stories about all these giant people, whether it's actors like we were talking about earlier, people at BBC.
That's awful for society.
Yep.
That there's enough people that want to make money off of children and preying on children.
Look how big the Epstein story is.
I mean,
look at the Epstein story.
Well, that blew the cover off of how widespread abusing children really is.
And that's just one.
I mean, that's one very wealthy guy that had a lot of political clout, and he had a lot of corporate clout. He had a lot of connections that clearly was abusing, underage girls. I mean, he really had an appetite for like 13, 14, 15. That's disgusting. It's all disgusting. It's just wrong. It's like somebody should go beat the shit out of some of these guys. I'm telling you, I'm going to wind up getting in trouble. But if I go, I'm not going to be like Tony Robbins and trying to, I think if I found one of these houses and there's like 15 kids, I'm going to go grab the guy by the neck and drag him outside and kick his ass. How about that? And then I'm going to wind up getting in trouble.
The thing about those videos is there's so many different people who are doing those things, and they go and they publicly shame these people. Which I've seen those. I've seen those videos. I think it's counterintuitive.
Yeah,
because those people are so evil inside. There's nothing you can do to them that's going to change that. They're not going to be reformed.
Yeah,
you got to put them away, and you got to do it all legally, right? Doing these things, I get it, but I don't think it's the
that's
the
a
way to
big
go.
trend. That's what you were saying earlier. There's been a big trend for taking power away from the police. It's a big mistake, defunding the police. And I think some of that came out of the stuff that you were involved with some of the protests for the Black Lives Matter protests. So there was some of the defunding of the police that came out of some of that. There was a big trend that police were harassing people. Police were unfairly picking on minorities and Latinos and blacks. And
they were calling for abolishing police.
Yeah, but
the New York Times ran a story saying, yes, we actually mean abolish the police.
Yeah, but it's crazy. There'd be lawlessness. There's police in every society in the whole world right now. I mean, that's what's going to prevent the really bad guys from doing the bad things.
That's the patriarchy. You can't have that.
This is the problem we come back to once again, is the politics of it is the Democratic Party is in line with these functions.
Tough on crime. We've got to get tough on crime in this country. We have to be tough on crime. Put away the bad guys, and that's period. We got to get really, really tough on crime.
Look at San Francisco, where if it's not $1,000, you're free to go. And now we've got videos of people, they walk into a Walgreens with a garbage bag and just dump everything into it and walk out, and no one can do anything about it. And the cops are like, why do we care? Society cannot function this way.
Society's going off the rails. Stuff is going super duper bad in America. Okay, when videos come up and people are so empowered, the Hells Angels are going to save the day and go and beat up those Venezuelan gangs because the police won't do anything about it. Like, what the hell is wrong in America right now? It's just cuckoo. Like, it's so crazy that everyone's all excited that the Hells Angels are going to come to the rescue.
Not true.
Like, where the hell are the police there? Like,
But that's not even a true story. My understanding is that that's just made up stuff.
Okay, that's made up stuff. I was like,
No one is doing anything. And look, I'll say it again. Your film is being suppressed. I think it's fairly obvious that there are powerful interests that want this problem to continue for whatever reason. It is
awful.
Perhaps managed decline of the United States. It could be. So, like I pulled it up. The fertility rate in 23 was 1.62. And so you are not replacing the workers who are retiring or the people who are dying. And to make matters worse, you need about four workers to support one Social Security recipient. So it's not even about whether the jobs can exist and the jobs numbers are good. It's that if we drop to 3 workers per one Social Security recipient, then Social Security becomes insolvent. And they're estimating 8 years is when the system completely breaks. And then it can only fund what goes into it. Then we're looking at many people who are going to be, in 8 years, who are going to be, in their 60s, and they're going to have no money at all. And they're not, and many of them aren't going to have families. I don't see how this system can survive without, honestly, with the rate of mass illegal immigration, which they have welcomed, probably in desperation, I suppose, and the problems we're seeing now with defaults or the threat of defaults on these office buildings.
Well, it's a pocket of cities. It's not everywhere, but I'm just saying that some cities are in really deep trouble right now.
Inflation is up, wages are down. The system is fractured and it's socially degrading. I don't see how this turns around at all. If someone were to, even if Trump wins, how do you reverse course on what is a tsunami of problems?
I see a lot of childless millennials going to live in the metaverse. A lot of illegal immigrants. I'm serious. A lot of illegal immigrants taking over the jobs in the real world.
It's going to be like Ready Player One. People are going to live in the stacks, trailers on top of trailers where they live in squalor, and they just go into the metaverse to escape.
It's the iPhone. It's Apple. We should all sue Apple because Apple created the iPhone and it changed humanity forever. Because everyone now is so addicted to staring at your phone all day that I think that there's a correlation between everybody staring at their phone for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours and then bonding and connecting with others. So like, how could you have such a bond with the iPhone and then like you should have bonds with other humans and procreate. Like God put us here.
I think we need to, I agree, but I think we need to be able to teach people to use it better. Like I like that we have the tools to do this.
That's because you're addicted to it.
I am addicted. I am for sure addicted.
Yeah, that's just the addiction. That's the addiction talking.
But I also love the
denial.
ability. I am Shane Cashman, and
you're addicted.
I have an iPhone problem.
Addicted.
But I also love that we have the tool to do these other things. Like I was saying earlier, there's so many bad things that come with this stuff, but it's so many great things. I have access to all these things, books, videos. I can learn so much. I can pull up an orchestra and show my kids this stuff. There are things that I really do love about it. And I don't think taking it away is great. I think teaching people how to use it.
There's in Harper's Ferry, the parking lots, the parking spaces require you to have a smartphone, and there's a bunch of probably most parking lots these days. It's QR code pay. And so I was parking over Labor Day weekend, and we went to this parking lot. We asked the guy how to pay, and he's like, "There's the sign with the QR code." And I went, "Okay, no problem." However, what if someone doesn't have a smartphone?
Right.
But the assumption is doesn't matter. If you don't, then you can't be you're not a customer here.
That's the future of Neuralink. Don't get me started on that.
Exactly. And I've told people, they say, "I will never get that thing." Here's an example. You're gonna pull into a parking lot and you're gonna say, "How do I pay?" And they go, Neural Connect.
Yep.
And you're gonna go, I don't have one. Not even. You're gonna just think it.
True.
Yeah. You're gonna think, okay, I'm parking here, and they're gonna be like, "You should already be paid on your Neural Connect." Be like, "I don't have one of those." And be like, "Well, then I don't know how you pay. You're gonna get towed."
Yeah.
Or to be fair, you won't be driving your car at all at that point.
That's right.
It's a bigger question of how do I get a car? You Neuralink it.
Right.
You Neural Connect it.
Right.
You request it through the app. It charges your account. This is the funny thing about social credit score. We're almost already there as we're getting away from cash.
100%.
And influencer jobs don't seem to make sense. If there are people who have the approved narrative and they make a lot of money,
Yep.
The system has been censoring and trying to shut out anybody who has a narrative that's not approved. And the money you get is just they don't need to give you a score of 1 to 1,000 or whatever, because you're just going to have money or no money based on the social things you do. That's it.
Can you live or not?
So you need a car. Well, you can't own a car anymore. It's all auto car. It's all, you use your phone or your neural connect to order a car that pulls up with no driver. Can you afford? Have you been a good citizen? Has your influence been positive, or are you banned? And if you're a positive influence, the money in your account goes up. And you can pay for the car ride, and it auto deducts it without any kind of transaction, just through your neural connect or whatever. That's the scary reality of the future, where we're going. And people who say, I won't do that, maybe you'll live in a homestead out in the middle of nowhere, which the machine state will be fine for you to do because you'll have no influence, and then you'll eventually just cease to exist.
Yep.
Yeah, the digital age is moving so rapidly right now, and the way that information is communicated and transferred. I've learned quite a bit about the digital marketing recently, only because I'm involved in this film. I wasn't really, I'm not real big on social media, and but I've met many of these influencers recently that attended some of our red carpet. And it's really amazing how many people can earn like 50 or 100,000 bucks a month. I just can't even believe it. I mean, I look at the content they're putting out, and I'm like, well, it's like not bad. They're famous people that have 5 million followers, and I'm like, holy shit, they're making like they're rich. Like they make like 50, 100,000 bucks a month. The whole digital
with millions of followers, you're making way
more. What? 5 million followers, you make even more than that.
Substantially.
Oh, wow. Then I was with some people. I was talking to a group of people. There was a couple really interesting girls that are supporting us. I can't recall their name. I've met so many people that are supporting our movie right now. These two girls have like a LinkedIn that has 200 or so other followers, or 2,000 or whatever it is. They built like a LinkedIn thing, and they offer services for all these other influencers. And then they are supporting us in our movie, and they brought some big influencers. I had a party at my house. I have the Scarface, the home that was in the movie Scarface.
Really?
With Michelle Pfeiffer goes up and down the elevator. We don't like it. My wife and I don't like owning that house because all these boats go to our backyard and take photos. People run up to our stainless steel doors. We don't have a gate or anything, and they're all running up there and taking photos and stuff like that. But now that I'm supporting this movie and another one, I'm like, hey.
Well, let me give you an example. Travis Kelce just signed a $100 million podcast deal. So it's over 3 years. It's $33.3 million per year.
What?
And he has, I think, like 2 million subscribers.
What? For 2 million subscribers, and he's getting 30 million a year?
33. I think he's splitting with his brother, but that's aside. That's besides the point. I mean, he has a podcast. It's his business, him and his brother, whatever, and that's the deal. 33 million. The Call Me Daddy woman, what does she get? Like 200 and something million? I don't know what the exact number is.
So I was talking to these young people, and I was like, hey, here, listen to this. And I had like 20 of these influencers, and they all had I was like, wow, the follower, you got 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million followers, 5 million. And I was like, and you look at them, and I was like, they don't really look like giant celebrities. They look like us. Like, I was like, holy shit, like these are powerful influencers. And so I started talking to them about our movie, and then I kind of pivoted and switched gears and said, look, you guys are in a position to use your voices, okay? And you've all been very successful. And it reminds me of what I was like when I was in my low 30s. And I recommended to them, and I said, all of you are entrepreneurs, just like I was in my low 30s. And all of you should really take a moment and think about trying to help others. Because if you give 5 or 10% of your energy every day, okay, it could be money, it could be creativity, and it could be using your voice. And I told them, it's going to make your business better. It made my business better. It made me being generous and giving back and having a good heart. It made my company more successful. There's no doubt about that, okay? Because it draws in people to your business. It creates long-term relationships. All the guys in my business that were other bond traders and sales guys, and all the guys that were entertaining clients in the wrong way, that didn't have the same ethics, and they didn't have the same family values as me, okay, where I take care of my family, all my extended family and everything, like those guys that could go and do this out with clients and do all that and go to all the, you know, get the women and all this other shit that happens in the financial industry with people exploiting women. A lot of those guys flame out. They do well for a while, but they're not in it for the long haul. That's what I was telling these guys. I was like, listen, you guys are all successful, and I'd ask you this. I would tell you to think about trying to help others and use some of your influence and attention to do just that. And they were all very quiet, and they were listening to me. And they look at me, and they're like, wow, this guy lives in the Scarface house. This guy's successful. And, you know, he's got, you know, the trappings of success. And then I turn around, and I'm like, look, like, you know, if you want to be successful, then you should think about helping others.
So what do these people do with their money?
Which people? The influencers?
There are people who are worth an exorbitant amount of money, and I wonder why it is that we don't see more activity in terms of, you know, like what you're doing, right? Like, what do they do? Do they just put their money in yachts and buildings and then forget about it and have someone manage it and then just buy a summer house in the Hamptons or something?
Yeah, it really depends who the people are. You know, it seems like my wife and I are surrounded by other people that are like-minded like us. And so we're in a network of people that are really wealthy like us and very blessed. And then we also hang out with a lot of people that we went to high school with and elementary school. And so we really are hanging around with people of all shapes and sizes. And, you know, we have friends that are Democrats and Republicans. I mean, just to your point, like, okay, so you have other successful business leaders or people that made money, and are they giving back? I mean, I was mentored by a lot of wonderful people when I was younger, both in business, okay, when I was in my lower 30s and late 20s, that had really mentored me. And made a really serious impact on me to think about being generous to other people. And a lot of them are all throughout South Florida. There's a wonderful man named Rick Case. He is an automotive dealer. He really made the Boys and Girls Club of Broward County. I mean, they're the #1 chapter in the whole country. And he mentored me when I was like 29. I joined the yacht club in the Bahamas called the Cat K Yacht Club. That's actually where this home, I bought an estate in 2003 called the Manor House. It's 100 years old. We've got a number of guest homes and gardens, and I had a really big year in 2003. And I named my film company Manor House Films after my property over there. But when we had joined, and Celine and I joined that community, we bumped into some people like Rick and Rita Case. I mean, like, they made tons of money in their auto dealership. Like, they're at 25% of their energy. All they do every day, I mean, unfortunately, Rick passed, and we actually had a really nice reception for him on my property at the Manor House. For his family and for Rita and all the membership that was there. But there are people like that I bumped into when I was like 29, 30, 31, right as I was starting to make a bunch of money. And I saw them and the way they conducted themselves in business and what a big heart they had. And I was lucky that I was mentored and inspired by that family and many others throughout South Florida. And I can't say it enough that, like, we don't need socialism or anything like that, and, you know, Robin Hood and take from the rich and give to the poor or whatever, but that all of us out there have an obligation as humans to think about caring for others. And it doesn't have to be with your money. That's what I keep saying. Like, you don't need tons of money to change the world. All you need to do is get up every day and try to think, you know, how can I help my neighbor? Okay. Mm-hmm. How can I be a good person? How could I write an email and advocate for something? Okay. You could do that every day. Every day you could say, how could I make the world a little bit of a better place? And
the idea of mentorship seems to be a rare thing these days.
Yeah. Right now, like, people ask me what my hobbies are. And it's funny you mentioned the mentoring. Like, my hobbies are, this isn't in any order, okay? I'm a spear fisherman, and so I swim underwater and I shoot fish. All my kids are spear fishermen. My daughter, Corinne, is an especially badass spear fisherman. I mean, she can swim down to 100 feet.
Wow.
I mean, she can spearfish better than any of the boys out there. She's very attractive. She's pretty. She's smart. She graduated magna cum laude recently from University of Richmond, double major, finance and Spanish. But she's a badass spear fisherman. Anyway, so the Devanys are spear fishermen. We shoot fish underwater. We shoot groupers and snappers and all stuff like that. I've been doing that my whole life. I love boating and traveling on boats and stuff like that. And I like adventure. Okay. And then like you, and I see the guitar right here, my whole life, I'm so passionate about music. I love music. And I've been hiring music recently as one of my hobbies. And so I think the last 2 years I've hired about 55 days of live music to play for me and my family and college kids. Probably about 45 of those days are at my property in the Bahamas. We have lunch. We have music play at lunch and dinner while we're in residence there. And then I hire music at business conferences and at my home on Key Biscayne and that type of thing. So I really, really love music. And then the third hobby that I have right now is mentoring kids. Like, there's no question that I am so connected to being around kids. And it's made my life so rich. And it's such a blessing for me. And this property, and I named my film company, Manor House Films, it is a blessing to me. Why? It's because it's a platform for me to mentor kids. I bring to the Manor House, I bring 20, 30, 40 college kids at one shot, okay? And that we have one table that seats 24 in this 100-year-old dining hall, and then we'll put another table that seats 10 right next to it. So we very frequently have 34 guests. And it's really an incredible place for me to talk to these kids and mentor them and let them talk to each other. And I'm kind of an old schooler when it comes, the kids wear a collared shirt when they come to have dinner. I don't care what kids wear when they're at lunch, but and they're not supposed to, you can't interrupt grown-ups when they're talking. You got to make eye contact. Lots of cool old school stuff. Don't do your damn phone in front of Big John. They all call me Big John, so I'm like, there's no phone. A lot of the phones have to go away. And I want to listen to music with these kids. I want them to talk to each other, and I mentor them. I let them express their feelings, and so like that's like. For me, that's what makes me happy.
Yeah.
Is talking to kids, trying to talk to the next generation. A lot of kids have issues at that age when you're like 18, 19, 20, and they're all trying to find their place in the world. And just like earlier when you said, oh, that was so nice that you had a mentor in philanthropy, that kids need other adults to connect with them. And, some kids have emotional problems. They've got problems with confidence. And, everybody's sort of maturing at a different pace.
Even when it comes down to learning financial literacy. My wife and I talk about this all the time. I got none of that growing up, and neither did she. Our schools didn't teach us, and neither did our parents. So it'd be nice. I think more kids need to understand that if you're going to navigate this world, obviously you need your morals. You want to, become a good moral person, but you also need to know how money works. How to save. All these things that we don't do at all right now.
Yeah, I love encouraging kids to dream. And so, like, I'm an example. People look at me and they're like, wow, you got this really cool place in the Bahamas. And I'm like, listen, like, everybody can dream. Like, you can dream and you can accomplish anything that you dream about and put your mind to. And so I love encouraging people to follow their dreams and do things that they are really passionate about and that they enjoy. I know that, like, everybody doesn't always have that opportunity, and they come from all kinds of walks of life and everything, but everybody has the power in their own mind to dream and then to try to follow through. And so that's what I talk about a lot with the kids. And I do talk about business, and I tell a lot of the kids my own story, when I was growing up and all the things that I did. I was actually an entrepreneur in college, and I bought real estate, and I read all these books on real estate investing. And, I made like hundreds of thousands of dollars when I was in college, actually. I started trading stock options. I was kind of a weird bird.
I had a very different college experience. That's awesome.
Yeah. So where do we go? What are the plans for the movie now?
I think we're going into our second weekend, and so I'm optimistic that we can sell out all these theaters. We're raising awareness. We're encouraging people to fill up all the theaters that we have left. I think that I hope that people could stand with us and and sort of demand that the theaters open up more theaters. It would be great to see them take us back to 500 and then 700. And so I'd really encourage people to come and see our story. It's so important that people watch this story and learn a lot about this issue right now. And like I said before, it's a real thriller. Like everybody that all of the reviews and people are like, the movie is excellent. And it taught me so much about these issues with children. It's very exciting. The ending's beautiful. I mean, if you want to go to a movie and cry and feel in your heart and connect with these kids and be touched by something, I would go and see the movie. I mean,
right on. Well, I think we can probably do some final thoughts, and maybe that was yours. Is there anything else you wanted to shout out or mention?
Yeah, no.
What's the website?
Or anything?
What's the website for the movie? And
Oh, okay. Yeah. Thank you. It's City of Dreams. It's cityofdreamsmovie.com is our website. You can buy tickets on the website. To learn more about films that matter, you could go to manorhousefilms.com. My Twitter is Deany70 John. We have another film coming out called The Prince, and that film deals with addiction. That has an all-star cast. That's my other film. That has Nicolas Cage, Giancarlo Esposito, J.K. Simmons.
can you say who wrote it?
David Mamet wrote it.
Amazing.
And my friend who has his vacation house on Key Biscayne, Andy Garcia, is in it. Andy told me, John, the film business is very risky. You're going to need all the help you could get. And I'd love to be in your film. And so Andy joined us. Very, very exciting film about an addict and the journey that he has dealing in a world of wealth, politics, and power in one hand. And then there's another seedy underworld that involves exploiting women and drug use, drug dealers and pimps. Nicolas Cage plays our pimp in that movie. Very, very exciting movie. The thing about this movie, it's not what anybody might think, okay? There's a Christ figure that Mamet wrote into the story here named Charles. Charles appears to the hero in this story almost as if it's an angel appearing to him. And he gives the hero very profound words and encourages the hero to make better choices. But just like a lot of addicts, they don't listen right away, okay? And as I said before, addiction is a very, very serious issue across our country. And so this kind of exciting story is unfolding where the addict is interacting in all these different worlds. And towards the end of the story, the audience actually feels empathy for the hero in this story. And through Charles's help, through God's help, this hero, okay, starts to reflect on his issues and problems, and you see him start to take steps towards recovery. It's a beautiful story, and I cried.
We should get David Mamet on this show.
Yeah, you got to get
one of our
David
greatest
Mamet.
living writers.
I cried when I read that story. Okay, my brother died of crack cocaine addiction. Okay, when I was 25 and he was 26. So, like for me, the story is very personal. I think that this film company, you know, the Manor House Films, like I'm saying, like we should back films that matter. Doesn't mean they can't be exciting. That a lot of the cast is sober. I cannot drink alcohol. Okay, like alcohol in me is bad. My brother died. My father was an alcoholic. Like I have to accept some of these things. I can't have alcohol, and then also that addiction, like I mentioned before, looking at some of the issues in Philadelphia and San Francisco, that our country together, like collectively, like again, this story here, it's not about the left and it's not about the right and it's not political at all. Yep. This is a story about an addict and a road to recovery, and Mamet wrote a masterpiece. And half, I don't want to like name all the names, but over half of all the actors and the producers and everybody's that's involved in this thing are sober. And they connected with Mamet's story. And I'll tell you this, that we're very proud to bring this other movie. And I hope that a lot of America agrees with me. And what I'm doing is different than what much of Hollywood is doing. Hollywood wants to make movies about superheroes, and like they're not making movies that matter all the time. And so I hope that a lot of Americans will connect with my mission, to support movies that matter and produce things that could help society. It's kind of like social impact investing, okay? And I think, and I believe in that. I believe that consumers should invest in things that could make the world a better place. That's what social impact investing is. I believe in ESG investing too. I'm not like a crazy, person that believes in all electric cars, or I don't really swing one way or to the other. But I do believe in protecting our planet for sure, and I believe in the measurement of ESG initiatives. My wife's cousin Deany is leading a company right now that is creating software. They've signed up about 200 of the Fortune 500 companies, and the software is going to help them be compliant with ESG investing.
That's probably going to spike your ticket sales for the movie.
Well,
ESG is deeply unpopular among people who care about trafficking, especially.
Really?
Oh, yeah. ESG is like one of the principal issues that people on the conservative side are opposed to. What is it? Environmental social governance? Yeah, it's basically political ideology injected into corporations, which results in anti-meritocratic systems, which results in stock prices dropping and sales dropping.
More control. Well, that's like, it's because it's not laissez-faire. That a lot of the conservatives don't believe that some of these types of policies should be woven into corporate governance. And so, although the point, I think, of some of the legislation, it does involve trying to measure these things, but many of these companies made a pledge that they would have a certain carbon footprint or whatever. And so I think some of the legislation is making them follow through with what they already agreed to do. And
yeah,
so,
deeply unpopular. I mean, I'll be completely honest with you. I don't think Democrats are going to line up behind a movie opposing trafficking. And I don't think anyone on the right's going to give you any support if you support ESG.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my film company intends to do more of social impact. Like, I would like to have a social impact, so that if I have this film company, I have a third project I'm looking at doing right now. So that I hope to have a studio, Manor House Films, and to engage with our audience. I intend to do some other really cool things too. Because right now, the digital age, like meeting and talking to all these influencers, I think it's important. Some of the news studios and distributors that have been created, they get 1 million or 2 million followers, and that people tend to follow filmmakers that they connect with. So hopefully the Manor House could have people that are like-minded and that will follow what we're doing, is what we hope. We'll probably give away a week at my Manor House property, and to have all the live music that we enjoy. And we're going to do like a big giveaway, and then have some people win going to the Manor House. Maybe they could bring like 20 people, and do some things like that. I mean, I think you need the views and followers. Like, everything's different the way that people do marketing right now. And so, but my kids and my wife right now, like, they really believe in what we're doing. They think that, like I said earlier, I was kind of choked up because, my daughter Corinne told me, Dad, like, you're doing the right thing. And I was like, Jesus. I was like, my kid told me that. Like, it really impacts me. I can't even tell you. She's like, that means everything. I'm like, kind of like when it comes to this movie, I'm like Trump. I'm like, fight. I'm like I'm here today because I want to give a voice to these kids. Like, I'm going to fight. And I think that trying to fund and use my resources to back and fund films that matter, films that deal with child trafficking, films that deal with addiction, I think it's very important, and I'm proud to do it.
Right on. Well, it's been fun. I really appreciate hanging out. And I don't know if you want to say anything before we go, Shane.
Pleasure being here. I'm the host of Inverted World Live. You can check it out Sunday, 6 o'clock. It's going to be awesome. Jay Dyer's on, and I'll probably talk about the spiritual rot in this country.
Right on. And you can check out Timcast IRL tonight at 8 p.m., youtube.com/TimcastIRL. You can follow me on X at Timcast. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all tonight.